Alrighty, Fatty, I'm going to make you the host now.
Before you leave, when you made me the host a minute ago for
Yes.
the last meeting, the recording stopped. So where do I start the recording as the host?
Well, I can stay on. That's fine. I'll leave it up. I'll just sit back here and
Okay.
and that way it'll record to my
Thank
thing
you.
and I can get it over to Tiana. Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry about that. I thought it would stay.
I didn't realize
recording.
that either. So
Yeah.
it looks like the RCPA folks are all coming in. They all need more Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
There's Mr. Sharp, and Sarah just sent us the background. Hey, Steve, how are you? Jess, how are you doing? Mark
Good to see you.
Mark couldn't stand it. He had to be in 2 meetings in a row with me. So it's back-to-back meetings.
On a Monday.
I'm going to start like receiving a bill from Acadia any day now, right? So did you guys sit in on any of the sessions last week? There were really excellent sessions at the conference.
I did not get a chance. I had a crazy week.
So they're recorded, so you should go like since the Bills are already out of the playoffs, you can watch.
Cowboys won yesterday.
I know Cowboys won yesterday.
That was a big win.
And you guys won yesterday. You won with field goals.
Me? My 40-0. My 40-0 win.
Yeah.
A couple field goals. That's right.
We got more people who just popped in here. So we got a total of 10 people here. Folks who don't want to be on camera. So why don't we get started? We have a pretty full agenda. Hey, Susan. We have for those of you who are not on camera, we have Jess, Allison, Amanda Johnson, Kathy DeGuire, Jim Sharp, Mark Shore, Mike Robb, Steve Shalnick, and Susan Blue. So first of all, we're just saying for those of you, I know that Sarah and Jim popped on. These guys worked amazingly hard last week. I can't thank them enough for a great conference. So considering all of the virtual stuff, those of you who had not participated, the recorded sessions are there. Please go back, and there's some excellent ones out there. Jim, particular shout out to you. I don't know how many sessions you were coordinating and present at, but your name kept popping up everywhere I went. You're muted.
I was trying to be a good participant. Thank you, Fatty.
Yeah, but you were everywhere. It was like the Jim Sharp conference.
I think Sarah and her team just did an amazing job. The conference committee, our crew at RCPA really came through to create a really great experience.
Thank you. We really appreciate everything you guys did. So, while you guys were at a conference, believe it, Susan and I were just talking about that. We all had to keep doing our work. Some of this work continues. So we are actually at a very nice inflection point for this work group after talking theoretically about a couple of areas where we could develop value-based payments based on Jess's effort and Amanda's efforts. We've prepared 2 draft directions, one for the SUD area and one for the diabetes monitoring aspect. And so what I would like to do is I'm going to first turn it over to Jess to start with the SUD one. So she put that one together, and I would turn to Amanda to the diabetes and go ahead and we want to make sure that this sounds like a fair team charter, for lack of a better term, that we would be able to invite a number of our other owner members to participate in helping us flesh out and turn it into a direction for the value-based payments contract that we would approach the BHMCOs with. So Jess, do you want to go first?
Sure. I
You can
know,
share screen if you want. I can make you host if you want to share your screen.
sure, I can pull up that proposal. I'm just pulling it up right now.
As long as you promise to, I'm going to make you co-host so that way you're able to share your screen and all that. And I make Amanda co-host as well.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. You guys see that? I'm gonna stop asking that. I know you can see it. It tells me you can see it.
There we go.
Okay, all right. So this is the proposal that really I'm giving you credit, Fatty. You really put this together with just some ingredients that we supplied you. But again, we spoke together a little bit about this last time. And what we're imagining doing is creating a practice space where as providers, we can come together to develop, not necessarily outside of payers, but to develop a little bit of a model, or to say, what is the clinical effort and the partnership effort that we can put together and pitch to a payer to say, we believe this is going to create outcomes for you. And these are behaviors that are over and above the very minimal standards that licensing prescribes, but that we know is going to create and support the kinds of outcomes that a payer is hoping to see. So the work group idea is just an opportunity for us to create a sandbox really together where we can come around and kick around some of these ideas. The selection of the really two different populations. The population I'm talking about is a forensically involved population with SMI, some co-occurring. These are a very high cost and high risk population for providers and payers. There are some providers across the Commonwealth who are engaged in programs that specifically target this population alone. And then there are programs across the Commonwealth where this population is certainly has a splashy presence. So there's really some experts out there that I think if we can pull them to the table, we can enjoy a conversation where we identify the behaviors that are most likely to create the outcomes that we would identify as valuable or as our big wins. And one of the things that we've been talking about together is the reality that the value-based purchasing models that play out in physical health don't necessarily always translate as cleanly into behavioral health because behaviors. So we know that as providers, we can set the table to create the best possible outcome when the consumers are engaged with us and are ready, when they have a readiness. So we want to be clear about what process measures are important to correlate to some of those outcomes that the payers are so eager to see. So what this is a call to the providers that would be able to come to the table and participate in that conversation. And that in that conversation together, we can land on those process and outcome measures. And then on the back end, have those discussions about how we can collect that data together. Fatty and Amanda, anything that I left out of that?
One thing, Jess, though, I think it's just as important while we're developing this is to actually demonstrate that we are able to get this data together and be able to communicate it back to an MCO, not just from an individual provider, but from a group of providers. So that, the biggest argument that I hear is that, yeah, but this is one provider. I don't have a benchmark. There is no best practice. You're just telling me that. So what the paradigm shift here is to say, here's 3 or 4 providers. I don't think we're going to do it with 50, but here's 3 or 4 providers. They got together, they identified this process, and they are collecting the data, and using the eSystems platform, we're able to try to bring it all together so that we can report it back to those MCOs in a manner that they see us as a valuable entity, not just so that they're not negotiating with individual providers and putting the pressures on you one at a time, but rather working with a group and recognizing there's a potential for a real benchmark.
Yeah, and that's consistent with some of the conversation we've had, which is there's a number of challenges to identifying and executing out of a VBP model. One is certainly what are the clinical behaviors that you're going to hold yourself accountable to. You actually have to be valuable. One is the how those metrics are collected, and then how does that come together as a conglomerate amount of data? Where is that stored together? How are we reflecting that as a conglomerate group? So while this is a sandbox certainly to play with some of those clinical metrics, I think too, playing around and practicing the behavior of the collection and shared reporting of that metric.
So how does this team charter, work group charter seems like to this group? Do we want to edit it? Are there changes you want to make to it? Or is this, and then I would welcome input on how we want to attract 3 to 4 key providers, maybe even by invitation, to participate in this particular effort under the direction or under the collaboration with this larger behavioral health group. Thoughts? Amanda, did you want to add something? I'm sorry, I stepped in there.
Oh, no, you're great. I don't have anything to add on this model.
Okay. Do we want to take on, so are there members of this work group today who would fit into this provider group description that we suggested in here, that would say, you're currently involved in some form of this forensic SMI and co-occurring population services. I would like this for us to be not from just one MCO, but rather with a broader representation, if at all possible, and hopefully a diversity of sizes. So we're not just bringing in the biggest providers to the table. Are there members of this group that want to raise their hand and say, Jess already volunteered, so she's already in. And to some extent, Amanda's in because she's going to be part of the systems part of it. So we need, either from this group or maybe offline, you can reach out to me and suggest a couple of other providers in this space who we can invite to participate in this conversation.
It's a little perhaps intimidating in some regard, but I think really what we're talking about is behaviors we're already doing, the things that we already do. So providers who are working with this population are already working really hard. And if we can identify what those things are and that are shared and get on the same page together with the things that we're already doing, I think we're really looking at just polishing up a process that could get a little bit more money to providers.
Yeah, I think, our organization does housing for individuals who are both with SMI and have a forensic background, but it's county money, it's not managed care money. And I don't know to what degree it would be helpful to have somebody like that in the conversation or not. I don't know, Jess, if you had given that any thought.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think the population has so much similarity around the challenges for engagement and remaining insured, being connected to resource. So I think anybody who speaks into that is really helpful. And
it is your population. It's just that it's not funded the same way.
Sure. I mean, at least it sets the table. If you will at least have those metrics if you want to go and negotiate with them out of that on your own, or, should you ever land in a place with, a different payer relationship. But I think, I of course covet your input. I don't want to take advantage of your time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only way in which it makes any sense to me is if you really want to look at the whole person and what their needs are outside of just strictly a clinic experience, if you will.
Yeah. So the perspective I'm coming to the table with is a community-based one.
Right.
We're not, not clinical services. So we're partnering with clinical services, and the housing component is huge with this population. It's probably one of the biggest need areas, because creating some stability outside of having housing is almost impossible. So I'm sure you come with a great deal of wisdom and knowledge around that.
So somebody from our organization, I think, would probably be willing to participate as long as, you recognize that we're county funded for those services.
We'll
Susan,
make
wouldn't
it,
that
bring
give
your
us-
own snacks.
Okay.
And Susan, wouldn't that actually help us present a more holistic point of view? That even though there are multiple sources of funding, there's this reality that this consumer is quite expensive to serve in a variety, and nobody may be looking at the whole person cost of care.
Yeah.
They won't share it because they say, well, a lot of that is being incurred in that other silo.
Mhm.
So
I like the idea of looking at this too as an opportunity to connect as providers. So I think under the best case scenario, we may land on a model that we can pitch to payers. That would be great. But we're practicing a behavior that is a new muscle that I think is going to be really advantageous to us in lots of other spaces. We have lots of populations we could talk about and tons of other clinical behaviors that support outcomes. But what we need is the muscle around how we have these conversations. How do we create a process where we can hypothesize possibly coming out with a model or an outcome that results in money? It's this practice that I find myself feeling the most excited about. I want to be in a space where we have these conversations as providers, and I think we'll learn a lot. I know I'm going to learn a lot.
So who else should be at the table? We already got Susan raising her hand. She'll volunteer somebody from her group to participate. Who should we? We do need, I'd say, 3 to 4 at least at this juncture, just so that we can demonstrate that we can actually come up with a singular process that people can collaborate on, and then a singular the ability to collect the data. Do we want to think of who else should be part of this? You guys know that segment a lot better. So any thoughts on that? Because I can then go back to our owner list, and knowing based on what they have already told us populations they serve, bring back a list of individuals that we can invite, quote unquote, to participate in this. That makes sense?
And I would say, even if it's a provider who says, I probably can't negotiate, like Susan is saying, I may not use this to negotiate rates with a payer, but I'm really curious about the conversation. And, I might just want to participate in the conversation. I think that's really valuable. So, if there's 3 or 4 providers at the table that imagine this could benefit me with a negotiation with a payer, that's great. But if there's 10 providers at the table that say, I just want to be at this table, I just want to be part of this conversation, I kind of, I have some skin in the game around this population, or I have some thoughts here, or I'm curious. I think that the more the better.
Okay. So you would not limit the size of that group at this stage?
No.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Maria. So here with English, the SMI, we have the SMI population, but as far as the co-occurring population, it's a bit limited. But I would love to participate in the conversation and be a part of the group. We don't have many co-occurring, just when people are, in the community we have minimal, and then in English house, just because medications are doled out and things are a lot stricter, we don't really see that issue. But I would love to participate in that conversation.
Awesome.
Volunteered. All right, well, we'll come up with a list of 7 or 8 organizations that we'll invite to the table. I'll make some phone calls. I'll reach out to those of you who know other providers in this space. And, we already have 4 already, with obviously Amanda being unfortunately suckered in by this for the data piece, but we're hoping that you guys also have that population a different way, don't you, Amanda?
We do. So I can play sort of, my favorite thing is I wear lots of hats. So
right.
I could actually even, I'm going to talk to a couple of our program directors to see if they might be interested as well, because again, sort of like Susan, a lot of our funding is county based as well for this population, but I think that could be a lot gleaned from them and their experience.
Okay. All right. So we'll shape this group. We'll send out notification of who said yes, and I'll make a bunch of phone calls, and please send me your recommendations for agencies to invite to this, and we'll reach out to them. All right, Amanda, you're up next. Do you want to take your work group that you're leading to the next conversation, please?
Yeah, let me steal your screen, Jess.
Oh, yeah. You guys didn't want to keep staring at that.
So when Jess and Fatty and I got together, we wanted to sort of put together a couple of options for you guys to consider. So you saw in the minutes that Allison sent out that there's this other opportunity here, which is a sort of different way to engage with the managed care companies. So I'm sorry for those of you that are familiar with the program, but I'm going to explain a little bit more in depth about the integrated care program that the physical health and behavioral health organizations are required to collaborate on. So that program is a pay-for-performance program that across the state that all BIMCOs and physical health MCOs are required to have certain data sharing elements so that they can achieve standards in some of these HEDIS metrics. And so from my experience, when I was in the the MCO lane, I was always trying to find ways to engage providers to support us with some of these data collection pieces, and just sort of never came to fruition. I don't think that there was anybody that could really bring a bunch of providers together and support the physical or behavioral health plans, or what does that look like? But given that we have these metrics that are already in line, it sort of would be backwards from what Jess had presented, in that we already know what the measures are, but now we have to figure out, I think, how we can come together to share some of that data with the MCOs to help them and improve their performance metrics so that they can then in turn achieve those incentives and share them with us. So that is the premise of this proposal here for this work group. And we sort of focused in on the SMI population. Again, there's a HEDIS metric that is with, what's the actual, the name of the HEDIS metric is the SSD measure, which is diabetes screening for people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder who are using antipsychotic medication. So I'm sure many of you are aware, whenever there's diabetes involved in the medications that individuals with these conditions take, it exacerbates their mental health and vice versa, right? So we see some not so ideal outcomes with this population. And what this is going to take for the state of Pennsylvania is to get physical health plans and behavioral health plans on the same page with this data collection piece. So then there could be interventions designed to help to improve those outcomes for the population. So when we were sort of like trying to tease this apart and how could we narrow in on a population, we fell into this one because we figured that there's probably many of us providers that are regularly sending our clients to get their diabetes screening. We're probably capturing that in our EHR somehow, may even be capturing the results of lab work or anything that we send them to have done. So we thought that perhaps we could leverage our power in data collection to come together and sort of build a framework for what we could then take to the behavioral health managed care companies and say, here's the population that we work with, here's the data that we collect. This is how we can help you to improve the outcomes for both of us, for our individuals that we're serving and for your members. So that is sort of the premise of this model here. I think that that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Anything, Jess or Fatty, you would add to that?
I think I caught a typo in the document that we sent out. Tell me if I'm misreading this. On the provider group members, and we say in here that serve forensic SMI co-occurring population. I don't think that that's the population we want to serve. Can you clarify who should be in that? Sorry, I just was reading it again, and it's obviously something we didn't catch in the first draft.
I think we just carried that over from the document.
Right, there you go.
Yeah. So this is going to be, it's still the SMI population, but just the SMI population, and this, the SMI conditions would then be those with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder.
Okay. So we'll make that correction. And this is a much broader provider group, correct?
Yes.
Than the early one we just did, because it's not the forensic SMI population.
Yeah, this is,
Just,
you know, I think in that one document that was also attached, it has the diagnostic.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you're all well aware of what, you know, the F20s and the F31s, if you're familiar with diagnostics. So we would be more targeted in that way. But yeah.
So again, so this is the purpose of this is to validate that we as a group can help them with identifying this particular measure that the state has built into the opportunity for value-based payment. And so this is a direct response to those measures that are being added, that we can say we can step into it as a group and help you meet that goal in the state contract.
Is this for all levels of care, or is this just for community-based ambulatory care providers?
All levels of care.
Okay, and then I see there was something I saw on the screen somewhere else, not on the screen now, but I thought I saw something earlier about having to have an EHR with the ability to capture everything. Where do you see it? What is what? Can you go up a little bit? Maybe it said.
Was it the other document?
Maybe. Was that? Yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
we'll have an EHR. Yeah.
So is it for this project? So, you know, we have an EHR in some of the facilities, but not in all of them, and not in the most, not yet. I mean, the installation of an EHR at Belmont is scheduled for early next year, month installation. So at least by the third quarter, maybe. So I don't know, you know, if that's what that would do. I mean,
We definitely would want to feed the data into the e-system platform. What did you say would be like the second quarter you're looking at implementation?
third quarter, you know, yeah, we're scheduled to have an EHR set up there. You know, it starts earlier in the year, but, you know, it takes 6 months probably. So, you know, it'll be closer to the end of the year, probably third quarter. We are on the Epic system at Tower. So that's probably would work. Epic is a med surg. You probably are aware Epic is. It's basically the platform almost every academic health system or med surg system has been moving to lately. It's too rich for the blood of behavioral health providers, but as a partner, they're kind of helping us have it. So we do have it at one place locally in Reading. But I don't have it in Philly. I don't know.
Amanda, is the EHR requirement one that we are adding, or is it one because in order to communicate with the e-system, or is it one that is part of the state standard?
It's not required by the state.
Okay.
We landed on it for the purposes of efficiency and embedding into the e-system, but that's not to say we couldn't do a flat file transfer if we were capturing on like an Excel spreadsheet or something. You know, there's other options. It's just, that was just for ease of efficiency, that be able
Right.
to pull down that data quickly and intercept it with the e-system.
Right. No, I agree. I just don't have it yet. All right. But it seems like there's a workaround with a flat file.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you raising your hand, Mark?
Not yet. Keep going.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
That's what I heard Mark saying, he wants to do this.
So Amanda,
Janet-
while you're working on Mark, from my perspective, I see this only in my organization, only being able to participate from an outpatient and a partial hospital program perspective, because any psychiatric involvement in other community-based programs is not fundamental to the service we deliver. It's kind of oversight, and that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate, right?
Absolutely. That's a great point, Susan. And those would be two, if you provide those levels of care, absolutely, those will be ideal, right? Yeah, because the farther you get away from the psychiatrist, you're not going to be requiring these types of orders. So,
Well, and also having a nurse
yeah.
on staff would be helpful too.
I think what's great about this project is it's really low hanging fruit. Nobody, like, they can say this is an important HEDIS measure, but nobody can really make anybody do that because it's not regulated. So this is a great point of negotiation with a payer to get a group of clinical providers together to do this, and it's pretty simple. So, you know, if it's designated best practice, it's not even too hard, well, everything's hard, but it shouldn't be super hard to get a prescriber on board to want to order the screen. And then even if, you know, just ways I can twist Mark's arm, I just like to do it. You know, even if it's not a place of readiness, that the input from all kinds of settings is invaluable to be able to say, how would we create a process for this? What is the way that we can make sure this consistently happens, and that we can, you know, make it an indicator so that the metric is pretty easily collected.
And Amanda, just for clarity, is the reporting of the diabetes process, screening for these individuals is just a reporting of the screening, not the fact that there's any treatment being applied or any specific activity that is a provider. So, you know, it's like a colon screening for males, right? Or a pap smear for women. So it's just the fact that
I'd like to start. Ideally, I think we'd want to get to the point where, okay, we had the screening, we got to the results. What did we do about it? Type of deal. What was the collaborative care with the physical health side? You know, and be able to further demonstrate the value of us banding together to be able to demonstrate even sort of that next step. But yes, initially we would just be capturing who's being screened.
It's essentially a binary screen, yes, no, screen, not screened, and score on the diabetes measures, scores on diabetes measures, right?
But doesn't that produce a dilemma if I'm the treating psychiatrist and I see an A1C or whatever it's called, that's way out. Don't I have an obligation as a physician to make a referral or to get the person treatment? I mean, saying it's just a screening, I think, understates what we would like to see happen.
Okay. Well, that's why I wanted to go into it, Susan, because there is action that has to follow, and is part of what we would be recommending is the monitor of the follow-on action that says, and therefore something was done. It's like, it's right. Because I'm sure there's the same thing for like high blood pressure. And it's like, so if I report on high blood pressure, but I don't give somebody medication for it or help them manage the disease, then they are, you know, all I know is they have it and it's not helpful.
When somebody comes into the clinic and they see one of our med assistants before they see the doctor, if they have high blood pressure, they deal with it right away. If it's off the scale, they get them to a hospital or to a physician.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it feels to me like we would be expecting those processes.
Yeah. Well,
I
I
think
just
what-
think the
I think it
expectation
would-
for the group needs to be that.
I think what happens on the
Iterative.
inpatient side is that there's admission criteria that would accept somebody with diabetes that's controlled and that the sugar level is at a certain place, and then they would be maintained on whatever their protocol is. If they're out of control or the sugar level is really high, then they're probably outside the parameters of the criteria for admission. So that's
Okay. Thank you, Mark. That was helpful.
I just go back to the exact specifications of this metric itself. And what we're trying to demonstrate initially is that we can collect this type of data collectively as a group, and that specifically is that binary yes or no. I sent them, they have this diagnosis.
Yeah.
I did the workup and I
Okay.
they're on the
Well,
medication.
a couple of things we could track. I mean, you could track, whether they don't have it, and they've been admitted, and those are going to look like controlled in a current treatment protocol for the disease, diabetes. Then there's going to be a secondary group that was basically denied admission because of the diabetes being out of control. So that's what it would look like, from our perspective, probably.
So is this an open call to all providers who work with the SMI population to see if we can get, 10 of them to say yes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, we're interested, I'll participate, so.
Okay.
I'll have to get somebody, from the facility that really is closer to the data, somebody maybe like Eve Barnett or something like that at Belmont, but yeah.
So is this is the same kind of action item on this one? We're going to send out an invitation to a group of providers to help them participate in this separate focused area with the trying to fulfill the expectations of this for the next 6 months or so, focusing in on the work to collect the data and demonstrate the process. Correct? Okay.
I guess, it's important, it is an important initiative. I think that, we do a lot of joint ventures with health systems, and they're always interested in us being able to raise the bar for medical comorbidities. And they even sometimes provide support for that. Nobody really pays for it. And then doing all this stuff, and so I think this is the direction things are moving, at least for us. So I do think it's important to go down this road for additional reimbursement for providing that, or at least identifying, what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we would participate as well.
So that's great. So one of the things that I'm seeing that ProVantaCare has the unique opportunity of doing with these MCOs is because they don't have to do 100%. They just have to do maybe 25% of all their activities in a value-based payment. We could be that value-based oyster for them until they get it up on their feet. And I think our selling proposition to the MCOs with these two is, look, we demonstrated that we can create a process for you. We demonstrated something that you can directly benefit from as part of your state contract or manage your cost, and therefore work with us, because we can be, even as you grow to 30, 40, 50%, we can still be that oyster where you can fulfill those obligations. I mean, that's the essence of the selling proposition here for us. And I hate to sound like a pure used car salesman, but that's the value added proposition we bring.
Would those documents be available to us?
Yeah, I think they were sent out as part of the invitation.
were they?
We can
Okay.
resend them. We can resend them.
Well, that's
Uh,
okay if they're on that.
So part of it is as we form these two groups, they're obviously going to work a little bit independently than this larger group. How do you think this larger group wants to participate in that? I think that, you know, there's a significant role for this leadership here to continue to forge forward and to make sure that we're on track. But it doesn't need to be an every 2 week type of a meeting. Maybe, I don't know. What's your thought on how we could keep this going and what your involvement would need to be? Steve has not volunteered for a single thing today, so we're gonna make him chair of this group. So he's not even unmuting himself for me today. So, you know, I just think that that I value everybody's time, and I hate to drag people into meetings where all they're doing is saying yes or no to stuff. But I think there's a role for a behavioral health oversight, for lack of a better term. Or we know, yes, we really like the diabetes pilot. Let's try to do it with the high blood pressure group or whatever. So is that a role that this group wants to continue, and maybe we make this a once a month type of meeting while the other groups are doing their work and bring it back? Or is that not often enough? I mean, do you want to keep a 2 week schedule as we are today?
I think that would be fine, Patty.
About once a month or every 2 weeks? Yeah. Which one?
Once a month.
Once a month, okay. How's the rest of the group feel? I'm not trying to be very democratic about it but I'm trying to manage time and priorities. And I know all of you have a lot of demands on your time. So if you guys would be okay with it, what we will do is we'll keep also, I think this group the larger group will probably need to help us with the work we're doing with the HIE, which I need to bring up in a minute here, because that's also a connection point to this activity here. So if you guys are okay with it, we'll get those two other work groups going, focused on those specific pilots, come back once a month to this larger group for checkpoints and updates, but also have this group continue to focus on the HIE piece. And let me bring you up to speed on that. We signed a contract with HSX this week. We are officially, ProVantaCare is officially a partner. We have not done our kickoff meeting with them yet. The intent of that, sorry about that noise. The intent of that is to help share the physical health data with the providers, but also to establish a pathway for sending some data from providers to the HIE. That is yet to be determined what it is exactly. Ultimately, the goal is to connect the physical health data of admissions and ED activity to value-based payment that you can gain attribution for and be paid for. That's the focus, and we will define it in a similar way to this, but I can't even put the parameters on it yet because we haven't had the kickoff. I don't know enough to ask you for stuff yet. So is that reasonable at this stage from a division of responsibilities? And Mark and Susan heard me say earlier, given all of my staff that you see on this call, I'm going to rely on all of you to help us with this lift. So I'll try to be a player coach, but I'm much more of a water boy than anything in this one. Make sure that you guys are well hydrated to go forward. So does that sound like a fair plan forward here?
Yep.
Okay, think of who you want to invite to be with you on these groups, because I think that if we can get a cohesive group to work on these two primary activities, plus this group focusing on the HIE, this is a very robust activity for a group that a year and a half ago, before the pandemic, we were going out around the state trying to attract members to join ProVantaCare, because we want to do something with behavioral health. So if anything, this looks like a lot of positive progress, and I appreciate the leadership that you guys are demonstrating. Okay, I'll give you back 13 minutes of your day. You can take a break
so
before your 1
great.
o'clock meeting.
Great. Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
Good to
Thank
see
you,
you.
everyone. We'll see
All
you
right,
in
thank
Promise.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.